Chapter 4176. Please return. Langley Xian's expression did not change. He had the appearance of an old cadre. If I don't see her today, I will absolutely not leave. That person gnashed her teeth in anger. This saintess must demand an explanation for the Linglong Palace master. Wu Fu if you don't stop, don't blame me for taking action, Tang Beiyuan said impatiently. A woman who has to rely on the Overlord to resolve everything. Only you people would treat her as the mistress of the Imperial Palace. Wu Fu laughed coldly. Come. Do you really think this saintess is afraid of you? As she spoke, Wu Fu Xian energy burst forth from her body, and she got into an attacking stance. Tang Beiyuan's expression was cold. She raised her hand and was about to attack. Suddenly, a young girl's clear and serene voice rang out from the room. Beiyuan, let her in. Qing Luo. Tang Beiyuan's hands paused as her expression changed drastically. For the past few days, she had been guarding outside the door. Naturally, he knew about Yi Qing Luo's current condition. If Yi Qing Luo saw Wu Fu and Wu Fu suddenly attacked Yi Qing Luo, what should she do? The risk was too great. It doesn't matter. Doesn't she want an explanation? I'll have a good talk with her. Yi Qing Luo's tone was indifferent. A glint flashed across Wu Fu's eyes. She retracted her attacking stance and raised her head arrogantly. Did you hear that? It's your master who wants to see me. Don't block the way. Tang Beiyuan's face was livid and she refused to budge. Wu Fu straightened her back and strode towards the door. When he approached Tang Beiyuan, he even puffed out his chest and bumped into her. Tang Beiyuan's eyes burned with anger. She clenched her fist and was about to punch. Beside her, Langley Xian held her hand and shook his head slightly at her. Wu Fu swaggered into the room with her head held high. Only then did Langley Xian let go of Tang Beiyuan and said in a low voice, Go find Di Zun. Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips and stared at the closed door for a moment. She gritted her teeth and said, Pay attention to what's going on inside. I'll go look for His Majesty right away. Inside the house, Wu Fu stepped into the room. That arrogance of hers had mysteriously dissipated. She did not know why, but her heart inexplicably began to beat uneasily. His originally arrogant face also became nervous, and his heart trembled. It was as if the air was filled with a kind of pressurizing aura. It made her a little breathless. Wu Fu didn't want to admit it. But he had to admit it. This was emanating from his bones. The fear towards Yi Qing Luo following the sound, she slowly walked into the inner hall. The room was decorated very elegantly. The scent of sandalwood in the air was soothing, but it made her heart tighten even more. It was as if he was looking at His Majesty right in front of him. The light in the room was dim and hazy. Her gaze slowly fell on the bed, the young girl who was leaning against the headboard. The luxurious and exquisite undergarments wrapped around the girl's beautiful figure. She just leaned against the wall. The lines of her figure were soft and smooth. The girl's black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, silky and thick. Between her brows was a lazy and cold gaze. Her half-squinted charming eyes were suffused with a faint cold glint. That pink lips slightly curled up into a smile. Although it looked delicate and charming, it inexplicably made one's scalp go numb and a chill run down their spine. Just a glance. Chapter 4177. Why? Don't you want to see me? The young lady's voice was filled with indifference and laziness. Wu Fu shuddered, as though she just realized her motive for coming here. Her eyes were fixed on the person on the bed. Her gaze was burning, as though she wanted to confirm something. But after staring at the young lady for some time, her brows were knitted into a knot. Yen Free City's mysterious lady, didn't you make a big fuss outside earlier? Now you're speechless when you see me? Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with ridicule. Wu Fu's face flushed red as her eyes widened. Who's speechless? She would never admit it. She was stunned by Yi Qing Luo's imposing manner. The prideful woman raised her chin arrogantly and said, "You instigated the Overlord to kill our temple master. You're alone, hiding in the room like a turtle. What kind of ability is that?" Yi Qing Luo's eyebrows rose, her long and narrow eyes were like a cat looking at her lazily. "Oh? My Xian killed the Linglong Palace Master? Do you have any evidence?" "You." Wu Fu bit her lower lip. "Do I still need any evidence? You were taken away by the Hall Master and the Overlord went to save you, so he killed the Hall Master. You saw it with your own eyes?" Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards with a "Are you an idiot?" expression. "You didn't see it with your own eyes and have no evidence. On what basis do you say that Xian killed the Linglong Palace Master? Other than the Overlord, who else can kill the Hall Master?" Wu Fu thought that Yi Qing Luo was quibbling. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head, her index finger lightly tapped on her lips, and said evilly, "She committed suicide." "Nonsense!" Wu Fu retorted without hesitation. "If you want to find an excuse, you should find a better one. How could the Hall Master possibly commit suicide?" "Oh, then, it was the Palace Master of the secluded palace who killed her?" Yi Qing Luo smiled. "That's even more impossible." Wu Fu exploded. "Brother Gong would never kill the Hall Master because of you. You're such a fickle woman. You've already seduced His Majesty, and now you're trying to seduce Brother Gong." "Tsk." Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. At the mention of her beloved brother, his battle prowess soared up. Why didn't he have this kind of fighting strength when he was denouncing Lord Hall Master? A few seconds of silence for the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace. The girl's face still had that kind of carefree and lazy expression. It was as if he had no reaction to her anger at all. This made Wu Fu feel very frustrated. "Are you done?" Yi Qing Luo asked with a smile. Wu Fu bit her lip and clenched her fists tightly as she looked at the unaffected young girl. She forced herself to calm down. Her motive for coming here wasn't to question Yi Qing Luo and the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness's relationship. She couldn't let Yi Qing Luo say a few words to make her flustered. "Yi Qing Luo, no matter how you quibble, Hall Master died because of you, that is the truth. I'm going to kill you and take revenge for the Hall Master." Wu Fu's eyes turned cold as her palm suddenly moved and her profound energy exploded, striking towards Yi Qing Luo's face. This palm strike was like a hot knife through butter. It brought along an extremely strong force. Langley Xian, who was outside the door, sensed this energy fluctuation. He instantly broke through the door and rushed into the room. "Mistress!" But it was too late. Chapter 4178. Wu Fu Don't you dare! After informing Dmo Xian about this matter, Tang Beiyuan rushed back and happened to see this scene. Her eyes turned red. Using the fastest speed in his life, he dashed forward. Yi Qing Luo had not only temporarily lost her profound energy, her own strength. She couldn't even exert her strength. Facing Wu Fu's attack, Yi Qing Luo couldn't avoid it at all. But, at this moment, with a bang, a figure flew out of the room and landed heavily on the ground. The ground cracked, revealing a huge, deep pit. Gravel flew everywhere, smoke curled up. Faintly, a figure could be seen lying in the deep pit. At the same time, there were numerous people outside the courtyard. Before the crowd could get a clear look, they saw a purple figure rushing over. That figure was tall and imposing. His purple robe rippled in all directions like flowing clouds under the powerful qi. That man's long arm reached out. The young lady lying lazily on the bed was pulled into the man's arms. "Wait a minute. On the bed? Then, the one who was sent flying was not Qing Luo?" Tang Beiyuan stared blankly at the man's arms, that languid, elegant cat-like young lady, her eyes filled with tears of excitement. Luckily Qing Luo was fine. A large palm, from behind her, rested on her shoulder. The thick palm brought a reassuring feeling. Tang Beiyuan glanced sideways. and met with Lang Lixian's calm eyes. He gently pulled her into his arms and said in a low voice, "Madam will not let anything happen to you." Tang Beiyuan pursed her lips tightly. Her gaze shifted little by little to the direction of the deep pit in the ground. The smoke dispersed. The person lying in the deep pit. Wasn't that Wu Fu-er? Tang Beiyuan was stunned. What was going on? Could it be that Qing Luo had regained her strength? But looking at Qing Luo in the arms of the Overlord, it didn't look like she had regained her strength. If she hadn't regained her strength, how did she do it when Wu Fu-er attacked her? Not only was she safe and sound, but she even repelled Wu Fu-er? Cough. Cough. The person in question, Wu Fu-er, was also very confused. She felt as if her entire body had been broken. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were also shattered. When he coughed, he would even cough out large mouthfuls of blood. She was in so much pain that her whole body was curled up. Yama Mystic Maiden. When the Linglong Palace's disciples saw this, they immediately rushed forward and wanted to help him up. But before he could get close, a formless air wave came toward him. Profound waves rippled in the air. All the Linglong Palace disciples who were near Wu Fu-er were pushed away. The Linglong Palace's disciples trembled and looked towards the source of the Qi wave in horror. His eyes met with a pair of cold, black eyes. It was just a slight match. He felt as if he was in an icehouse. They shivered and immediately lowered their heads, not daring to move an inch. It was the Overlord Di Zun was stopping them from getting close to the Empyrean City Ferry. Now, the entire Linglong Palace was almost under the control of Di Zun. Di Zun stopped them from approaching Wu Fu-er. How could they dare to disobey? Everyone could see that. This was Wu Fu-er's own doing. Offending Di Zun was equivalent to offending Di Zun. No one cared about Wu Fu-er, who was lying on the ground, twitching. Tears and blood mixed together. Chapter 4179. Are you hurt anywhere? Dmo Xian didn't even look at Wu Fu-er but lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms as he asked gently. He asked while asking. His gaze swept over Yiqing Luo from top to bottom. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she leaned her head on his shoulder. No matter, I know what I'm doing. Looks like I have to tie you to my side at all times. Dmo Xian's tone was slightly displeased. The moment I'm not by your side, you start to create trouble. Yiqing Luo cried out in injustice. I'm very obedient. Extremely obedient. Dmo Xian lowered his head and bit her nose lightly, indicating that he didn't believe her words. Yiqing Luo snorted. The too sweet atmosphere made the surrounding people not dare to disturb them. Just at this moment, suddenly, he heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching from afar. Following that, they saw a lady dressed in a green lotus robe rushing over. Her vision fell onto Wu Fu-er, who was deeply embedded in the pit. When she saw Wu Fu-er's current state, tears streamed down her face. Fu-er! Fu-er! Wasn't that person Wu Fu-er's grandmother, Hall Master Wu Yan? Perhaps Dmo Xian's heart was on Yiqing Luo. Or perhaps Dmo Xian didn't intend to stop the two of them from interacting. Hall Master Wu Yan easily rushed to Wu Fu-er's side and speedily fed the pill into Wu Fu-er's mouth. At the same time, he injected profound qi into Wu Fu. Grandma, Wu. Wu Fu-er was in so much pain that her body was twitching, but her consciousness was extremely clear. When she saw Hall Master Wu Yan, her stomach was filled with grievances as it surged up. Fu-er, don't talk. Hall Master Wu Yan's voice was trembling as he held his granddaughter's icy cold hand tightly. When the pill entered her stomach, the pain in Wu Fu-er's body was finally alleviated. But that face was still terrifyingly pale. Hall Master Wu Yan's heart ached as he trembled as he caressed Wu Fu-er's icy cold face, tears flowing down uncontrollably. Grandma, Fu-er is in so much pain. Wu Fu-er lay in Hall Master Wu Yan's arms and cried. Hall Master Wu Yan hugged her, his heart aching for her. Grandma will help you, she hugged Wu Fu Air and stared hatefully at Yi Qing Luo's direction. Imperial Madam, Fu is just young and impetuous. Even if she did something wrong, you shouldn't have been so ruthless. After killing our palace master, do you still want to kill the only mysterious fairy of our palace of Linglong? Hall Master Wu Yan's words had indirectly reminded the disciples of the Linglong Palace Hall. This Yi Qing Luo was also responsible for the murder of the other two mystical maiden. Now, the palace master of the Linglong Palace had also killed the palace master of the Linglong Palace because of her. Yi Qing Luo could be said to be the enemy of Linglong Palace. Every single word and sentence was to provoke the Linglong Palace's disciples' hatred towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo, who had long seen through everything, raised her brows without any change in expression as she looked at Hall Head Wu Yan, her eyes filled with ridicule. Hall Head Wu Yan, have you forgotten, I seem to be younger than that precious granddaughter of yours? Young and impetuous? When she said this, could she use some brains? Using Hall Head Wu Yan's words, being younger can only be considered as being young and impetuous. Even if she did something wrong, she shouldn't be punished, right? Chapter 4180. You! Hall Head Wu Yan's face was twisted into a ball, as she had not expected Yi Qing Luo to use the loophole in her words to counterattack. If you can't do it yourself, what right do you have to ask me? Yi Qing Luo sneered. Moreover, I've already said this many times, your hall master and those few profound nymphs' deaths have nothing to do with me. If you've ascertained that it's me, please bring out the evidence. After a slight pause, Yi Qing Luo's smile turned into a sneer. It's just a matter of opening your mouth. Can I also say that you were dissatisfied with the palace master of the Linglong Palace and wanted me to become the next palace master's successor? So you tried to usurp the throne and killed the palace master of the Linglong Palace? What nonsense are you talking about? Hall leader Wu Yan's face turned ashen as he retorted. Yi Qing Luo shrugged her shoulders. Everyone knows about Sima Zhao's intentions. Do you really think that no one can see through your ambition? Hall Master Wu Yan's body suddenly froze and he retorted with a panicked expression. I have worked hard for the Linglong Palace for decades and have wholeheartedly assisted the palace master. I would never dare to be disloyal. You outsider, why are you slandering me? What are your intentions? Yi Qing Luo smiled without saying a word. That smile seemed to be mocking Hall Master Wu Yan's sophistry. No one would believe him. Hall Chief Wu Yan's expression was extremely ugly. As a disloyal person, she had been exposed in front of him. He felt the most guilty. He totally didn't notice that unknowingly, he had been led into a rhythm by Yi Qing Luo, totally forgetting to denounce his own granddaughter. His heart was filled with the desire to defend himself, becoming the Linglong Palace master through the proper channels, or becoming the Linglong Palace master through schemes. The meaning between the two was completely different. Grandmother! Wu Fu Air cried pitifully in Wu Yan's arms. She swallowed the pill that Hall leader Wu Yan had fed her. The intense pain of having his body and mind shattered had already subsided. But this didn't mean that she would let Yi Qing Luo off easily. She must seek justice for her grandmother. Yi Qing Luo dared to make a move on her, the only mysterious fairy in Linglong Hall. He had to pay the price for this. However, to Wu Fu Er's disappointment, even if Hall leader Wu Yan wanted to feel heartache for her grievances, he could not even take care of himself, because, the moment Wu Fu Er opened her mouth, she felt wronged. The man's indifferent and cold gaze had already landed on Hall leader Wu Yan. His red lips curled up frivolously. His smile was cold. Even the light in his eyes was cold. In an instant, Hall leader Wu Yan felt a chill run down his spine. His throat seemed to be blocked by something, and he could not speak. This senior has already said that this senior will deal with the matter regarding the Linglong Palace master. The man's deep and magnetic voice was extremely dignified as it reverberated in the air. The moment he opened his mouth, Almost in an instant the entire place quietened down. Hall Master Wu Yen. Suddenly, Diamo Xian called out Hall Master Wu Yen. These 4 words caused Hall Chief Wu Yan's body to tense up even more. The man's cold words fell into her ears. Do you still remember what I said on the first day I arrived at the Linglong Palace? Hall Master Wu Yen abruptly raised his head as he looked at Diamo Xian with a pale face. She subconsciously hugged her granddaughter tightly in her arms, and her lips trembled a little. Diamo Xian's lips curled coldly as the sneer in his eyes deepened. If you've forgotten, this senior doesn't mind helping you recall. Following these words, the surrounding air seemed to have condensed into frost. Chapter 4181. Hall Head Wu Yan's throat tightened. He could hear the threat in Diamo Xian's words and didn't dare to pretend that he didn't understand Diamo Xian's words. He immediately lowered his eyes and pursed his lip. The Overlord said that no one is allowed to disturb Madame D during this period. Diamo Xian's smile turned colder. There was no emotion in his frozen eyes. He spat out 2 words. Ah Xian. Langley Xian understood and patted the girl's head in his arms. He walked towards Hall Head Wu Yan expressionlessly. Hall Head Wu Yan's face tightened. He immediately carried Wu Fuer and wanted to retreat. But Langley Xian just stretched out his hand. He lifted Wu Fuer by the collar and lifted her up from Hall Head Wu Yan's arms. Hall Head Wu Yan was anxious to save his granddaughter. But before he could get close, he was stopped by Tang Beiyuan. Hall Master Wu Yan, the Empyrean Fairy of Yen City, came to find the Emperor's wife on her own despite knowing that it was the Emperor's order. She even tried to kill the Emperor's wife. Is the Empyrean Fairy of Yen City looking down on the Imperial Palace, or is she acting on your orders? Tang Beiyuan deliberately dragged out her words and raised her tone. It seemed to be a taunt and a threat. Hall Master Wu Yan shook his head in panic. Fu doesn't have any ill intentions. She just wants to ask the Imperial Madam what happened when the Hall Master died. She just wants to investigate the truth behind the Hall Master's death. This explanation was too far-fetched. Hall Head Wu Yan felt guilty when he said it himself. Tang Beiyuan raised her hand and stopped Hall Head Wu Yan's explanation. Yen Wu City's mysterious maiden barged into Madame D's resting room and attacked her. This is the truth. Hall Head Wu Yan need not say any more. The more you say, I can't help but suspect if Yen Wu City's mysterious maiden's actions are really related to you. These few words caused Hall Chief Wu Yan to stop trying to snatch Wu Fuer back. Wu Fuer was so scared that her face turned pale. Tears welled up in her eyes. Grandma, Grandma! But no matter how she called out aggrievedly, Hall Head Wu Yan could only bear the pain and turn his head away. In this situation, if she was really implicated, neither of them could escape. Hall Chief Wu Yan listened to the aggrieved cries that made her heart ache. She clenched her fists tightly and suppressed the surging impulse in her heart. Under Diamo Xian's suggestion, Langley Xian brought Wu Fuer away. Without the sound of her crying, the surroundings were extremely quiet. The onlookers did not dare to break the silence. Diamo Xian carried Yi Qing Luo in his arms as he turned around and strode into the room. The door suddenly closed, blocking the view of the outside world. Tang Beiyuan looked at the trembling crowd before her and smirked. Today's lesson is to tell you not to disturb Lady D. Even if you offend His Majesty, you shouldn't offend Lady D. Do you understand? Inside the house, Diamo Xian carried her back to the inner hall. The girl kept her eyes closed as she rested. Only when her body leaned against the soft bed did she lazily open her eyes. Has it been solved? Very tired? Diamo Xian didn't answer her question but sat by the bedside and kissed her sleepy brows. Yi Qing Luo shut her eyes and her voice was lazy. Still all right, just a little tired. Nestled in Diamo Xian's arms, her consciousness started to blur as she was half asleep. Chapter 4182. If you know that you're tired, you still want to see that woman? Diamo Xian's tone was somewhat displeased as he lowered his head and bit her lips. Yiqing Luo was in pain and her body struggled a little as she stared at him resentfully. I'm already so uncomfortable and you're still not going to comfort me. Her tone was filled with the coquettish manner of a young girl. Dmo Xian's feigned anger could no longer be maintained as he helplessly hugged her delicate body tightly. Why should I comfort you? He asked for it. His mouth was full of complaints, but his movements were gentle and affectionate. Yiqing Luo leaned into the man's arms, her charming eyes squinted, her posture was as lazy as a cat. If I don't see her, I'm afraid the consequences will be even more troublesome. This is the best solution I can think of. What if anything happens? Dmo Xian pinched her nose. I'll be worried about you, understand? Yiqing Luo nudged her head against his chest. I know so. I'm very serious about protecting myself. She raised her head and rested her chin on Dmo Xian's chest, looking up at his peerless countenance. Ah Xian, tell me. Who is the person who sent Wu Fu heir to my courtyard to create trouble? Dmo Xian knew that this little woman was trying to change the topic. He cooperated and didn't continue to harass the girl. He answered the girl's question. Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Yiqing Luo tilted her little head and blinked her charming eyes. There are too many guesses, and there's no way to confirm and verify. Yes. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo had purposely chosen to meet Wu Fu heir. This was because Wu Fu heir had insisted on meeting her at this critical juncture, and had even made a big fuss about it. Wasn't it so that he could see her with his own eyes? And the reason to see her? He just wanted to confirm her current condition. After all, if the person behind the scenes was really related to the Dark Nether Palace, the matters between her and the Hall Master of the Ling Long Palace and the barbaric Blood Bone King, as well as the fact that she might have lost her profound energy. It was not surprising that the Palace of Darkness would know about it. Therefore, Wu Fu was sent to test and confirm whether she had really lost her powers. Because ever since the news of the Ling Long Palace Lord's death spread out, Yiqing Luo then faded out of everyone's line of sight. Even if it was mentioned, the answer he gave was that the Imperial Madam was not feeling well and was currently recuperating. These were all similar excuses. This made the other party suspicious. Had Yiqing Luo really suffered some sort of injury in the confrontation with the barbaric Blood Bone King, causing any repercussions, etc.? Because of this, Wu Fu appeared. Of course, this was only her guess. The person behind this might not be someone from the Dark Palace. The reason why Yiqing Luo would allow Wu Fu to enter the room if she was not careful was to make use of Wu Fu to eliminate the other party's guesses. Wu Fu had always been afraid of her. Trembling with fear, he braced himself and entered the room, shouting all sorts of things. But on seeing that Yiqing Luo was safe and sound, and her relaxed attitude, which part of her looked like someone who had lost her profound energy, or someone who was not feeling well, this is a sense. This made Wu Fu heir's fear towards Yiqing Luo even more. Because of this, when he faced Yiqing Luo, he was filled with fear and uneasiness. Chapter 4183. The room door was opened by someone again. It was Old Lai, Patriarch Qiao and the rest. Tang Beiyuan was following behind. Old Lai was the first to bear the brunt as his eyes were filled with joy. Madam D, have you regained your strength? Earlier, they were among those who rushed over with Dmo Xian. When the news of Linglong Palace Lord's death had spread throughout the Earth realm, and when the death of Linglong Palace Lord was related to the Overlord, almost all the influential figures in the Earth realm had rushed over to Linglong Palace Lord. These few days, everyone looked calm on the surface, but in actual fact, they were all testing each other. Patriarch Qiao, Old Lai and the rest also knew that Yiqing Luo had temporarily lost her strength. So they went to find trouble with Wu Fu. One by one, they rushed over. Coincidentally, they saw the scene of Wu Fu being sent flying onto the ground. No. Yiqing Luo looked at their joyous gazes as she shook her head slowly. No? Old Lai looked at her in astonishment. No? Then how did you do it earlier? to send Yen free city's mysterious maiden flying with one palm. The joy on the faces of the others also gradually faded. Yiqing Luo's weak body, plus the situation of losing her profound energy. After a long time, it was easy to arouse suspicions from all sides, and very easy to get into trouble. Yiqing Luo smiled, but it was a smokescreen for Wu Fuer's fear of me. No matter who the person behind Wu Fuer was, the matter that the other party wanted to investigate would be completely dispelled because of Yiqing Luo's actions today. After all, if Yiqing Luo's body was really affected by the barbaric Blood-Bone King, then she wouldn't be able to meet Wu Fuer so boldly, and send Wu Fuer flying with one palm. I can tell that Lil Luo is well prepared. Dmo Xian placed the young lady on the bed, and pulled the blanket over to cover her up. He then sat by the bed and held her hand as his gaze fell onto a certain spot. When he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking manner. Yiqing Luo followed his gaze and looked over. A transparent white figure who was hiding in the corner was faintly discernible in the air. She was discovered just like that. This man was too perceptive. Yiqing Luo held on to Dmo Xian's hand, not letting his line of sight to intimidate that figure in the dark. Their attention was not diverted by Dmo Xian. They were all placed on Yiqing Luo, their faces filled with astonishment. What camouflage? He's that powerful? This wasn't just because she knew that Wu Fu, or was afraid of her. Even they couldn't tell that it was a smokescreen. Yiqing Luo smiled, and when she lowered her eyes, her slender fingers gently caressed the cherry blossom totem on her wrist. His smile was a little unfathomable. On the other side, Old Man Tsang, who had received the warning from Di Guang, expressed his bitterness. He should have directly flown back into the Azure Dew bracelet. Why was he so nosy that he had to hide in his room in his spiritual body form to watch the show? As a matter of fact, Di Zun found out. Furthermore, he looked at Di Zun's eyes. He seemed to be very unhappy about the cooperation he had given Luo Yu. Was she blaming him for not stopping Luo Bingyao from fooling around? Instead, he was fooling around with her? Could he be blamed for this? What could he do? He was in despair, all right? Did he look like someone who could reject Luo Yu? Did Luo Yu look like someone who would give up after being rejected? If it was the Overlord himself, could he reject Luo Yu? Chapter 4184. Yes. The so-called camouflage. But she had secretly borrowed the strength of Old Man Tsang. After losing her profound energy, the divine weapon she carried could not be activated without the infusion of profound energy. Even the Azure Dew bracelet could not be activated. Only Old Man Tsang in the Azure Dew bracelet could move freely. Therefore, Yiqing Luo made use of Wu Fu Er's fear of her. When Wu Fu Er launched an attack, Old Man Yu Tsang appeared and sent him flying. Old Man Tsang was just a spiritual existence. Basically, he could not attract anyone's attention, especially Wu Fuer, who was terrified. Not to mention, she could not identify where the power to counter her came from. But she did not expect Dmo Xian to see that it was Old Man Tsang who was secretly helping her. Old Lai asked a few more questions. Yiqing Luo had just dealt with Wu Fu Er and her body was already exhausted. In a daze, he heard Dmo Xian chasing the few of them out. Shortly after, the man climbed onto the bed. His strong arms pulled her body into his embrace. Lying on the man's broad chest, her nose was filled with the man's elegant sandalwood scent. It was a soothing scent, made her fall into a deep sleep. Inside the dark palace, the surroundings were filled with black qi and yin qi. Several figures in black cloaks stood respectfully on both sides of the hall, and in the middle was a tall figure half kneeling on the ground. That person was also covered from head to toe in a black robe, and his face could not be seen clearly. In front of them, it was a black curtain. The curtain fluttered lightly like black smoke rippling. It rippled with an invisible and treacherous chill. The few of them couldn't help but shiver under the cold. Finally willing to come back? Behind the black curtain, came a cool, cold voice without any warmth. That voice made one's scalp tingle. The black-robed man who was half kneeling on the ground knelt even lower, his forehead touching his head. His voice trembled. Master, you still know that I am your master?" The cold voice sneered. The tone was filled with a dangerous aura. The person kneeling on the ground trembled and said with a trembling voice, "This disciple doesn't dare." As soon as the black-robed man finished speaking, the air seemed to be filled with a cold glint. All of a sudden, a sharp force rushed down. The black-robed man didn't even have time to scream before he was sent flying by the force. He smashed into the wall and vomited blood. The black-robed man's body landed heavily on the ground again. The black-robed man did not stop at all. He forced his swaying body to kneel on the ground again. A large mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth. His mouth was still saying, "Your disciple doesn't dare. Your disciple doesn't dare. Why wouldn't you dare?" The cold voice sounded like an Azura from hell. "I know I was wrong." The black-robed man curled up and begged for mercy in a low voice. The gloomy voice sneered a few times. Suddenly, she heard that cold and gloomy voice with a hint of malice. "You like her?" The back of the black-robed man stiffened. He quickly raised his head and said, "Master, your disciple didn't. The cold voice sneered. His tone was full of ridicule. "You disobeyed my orders and secretly sent her a message. That's called didn't?" The eyes under the black robe revealed a horrified expression. Chapter 4185. Heh! When that cold voice chuckled, the entire person, even the pores, exuded a chill. Not going to quibble anymore. Master is so resourceful, no matter how this disciple quibbles, I can't hide it from Master. The black-robed person's voice trembled. This disciple is willing to accept the punishment. There's no need to accept the punishment. The cold voice sounded cold. After all your actions have become the key to help this seat achieve my goal. The black-robed person's body trembled, her face turned pale. In his heart, thinking of himself these few times, whether it was meeting her privately, or wanting to take her away, it would turn the situation, turn the matter, into a series of things which were pushed by him. It was no wonder she was unwilling to believe him. In his heart, no matter how much indignation, he also didn't dare to express any opinion. He also didn't dare to follow Master's words, act obedient to seek favor. This seat's good disciple. The cold voice sighed faintly. Want to get her? The black-robed person's fingers suddenly curled up. Master. He was vigilant in his heart. He wanted to plead for her. Once Master had his eyes on her, she would not be able to escape. But the words begging for mercy were at the tip of his tongue. But when he met that pair of treacherous cold eyes behind the black curtain, he stiffly dared not to open his mouth. The cold voice laughed in a low voice. This seat's good disciple, don't forget. That red clear pavilion's pavilion lord also admires her. An overlord, a red clear pavilion's pavilion lord. Do you think, just based on you, can get the beauty back? Suddenly, his tone abruptly increased. Just answer, do you want or not? The black-robed person's heart instantly jumped. Yes. He almost blurted out. There was no room for regret. You are this seat's most beloved disciple. Whatever you want, this seat will naturally get it for you. That cold and gloomy voice cackled. Obviously, the words sounded like concern for the black-robed person. However, his tone was enough to make one tremble with fear. Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo slowly opened her eyes in the midst of sleepiness. The man was no longer by her side. She lazily stretched out a hand. The position beside him was also ice-cold. Come to think of it, the man must have accompanied her until she fell into a deep sleep, then left. Yiqing Luo stretched herself. His whole body was still limp, and he couldn't muster up any strength. In the past few days, he even needed someone to serve him 3 meals a day. She was already used to it. His heart would no longer be like before, constantly wondering when he would be able to regain his former strength. She was anxious. The people around her were actually more anxious than she was. These few days, Yiqing Luo had also understood a little from Old Man Song. Her body had become like this. It was probably when the barbaric Bloodbone King was forcefully occupying her body. The force that had forcefully entered her body had blocked a certain place in her profound heart jade. That was why he temporarily lost his strength. He was unable to circulate his profound heart jade. After all, it was related to the cultivation of one's profound strength, as well as the circulation of one's profound jade heart. Before I can find the blockage. However, he did not dare to act rashly. All he could do was find out where the blockage was. Then, he would unblock the blockage. Only then could he recover his strength. Now that things had come to this, Yiqing Luo could only wait patiently. This kind of matter couldn't be rushed. Roar, roar! Suddenly, something furry rubbed against her feet. Immediately following that, a white furry little head popped out from the blanket. Chapter 4186. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand. Chi-Chi's head was placed in her palm. Roar, roar! Chi-Chi whimpered softly, as though it was acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo carried the little one in her arms as her slender fingers caressed its little head. How is it? Did you discover anything? Chi-Chi squinted its tiger eyes with a comfortable and joyful expression as its soft voice sounded like a child. Chi-Chi listened to Master's arrangements and went over to Wu Fu Er's side. It raised its neck and spread its limbs wide, revealing its white belly. Just as Master had guessed, Hall leader Wu Yen bribed the female disciple on guard and secretly went to the dungeon to see Wu Fu Er. Yiqing Luo caressed Chi-Chi's soft belly as her eyes narrowed. She specially asked Chi-Chi to keep an eye on Wu Fu Er secretly. It was to find out who was the person behind Wu Fu Er. Everything was as she had guessed. Hall Master Wu Yen should have led Wu Fu Er to seek refuge with other forces, against the Imperial Palace and against her. For now, Yiqing Luo's mind was only filled with the three words, secluded palace. After all, if it was other forces, even if they had any opinions about her, in front of DMO Xian, they wouldn't dare to be so unbridled. Did you hear what they said? Yiqing Luo asked. Chi-Chi flipped over again. Hall Master Wu Yen said. Secluded Palace will definitely save Wu Fu Er and leave Linglong Palace. He also said that they have already sent news and can take action immediately. It was indeed the Secluded Palace. It was really a force that refused to leave. Why was it always on her? And this action, what action was it referring to? Secluded Palace. They had failed several times, and their losses were considered heavy. Now they were going to take action again? What new tricks did they come up with this time? Or, what trump card did they have for sure? Yiqing Luo subconsciously thought of herself. The one who had lost her profound energy. Could it be that the collaboration with Old Man Song to deal with Wu Fu Er had not fooled the other party? Yiqing Luo decided to inform DMO Xian about this matter first. Yiqing Luo felt that with DMO Xian by her side, anything could be easily solved. During this period of time when he lost his power, she would just rely on her man. She tapped Chi-Chi's head lightly. Go and see what Xian is doing. If he's free, ask him to come over. Chi-Chi rubbed against her palm for a long time before she jumped down from the bed with her tail raised and jumped out of the window. Chi-Chi's shadow disappeared from the room. A clear and majestic voice came from outside the door. Madam D. Yiqing Luo propped herself up as her gaze swept towards the room door, responding softly, Patriarch Qiao, is anything the matter? Patriarch Qiao paused at the door. The Overlord asked me to invite you to the front hall. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Xian? What did she want me to do in the front room? It seems that because of the mysterious Lady of Yama's matter, Hall Master Wu Yen incited many female disciples of the Linglong Palace in an attempt to avenge the Linglong Palace Master. Patriarch Qiao's tone was a little helpless. Those female disciples have been incited to the point that they have lost their minds. They don't care about the Overlord's existence at all. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her expression changed slightly. How does Xian intend to handle this? Chapter 41-87. This time it was noisy. It was probably not just Hall leader Wu Yan's instigation. Not to mention the various superpowers that were eyeing them covetously from behind. Everyone wanted to share the burden of the Linglong Palace. After all, an existence like the Di Zun would never stay in the land for too long. Hence, it was impossible for him to be interested in the Linglong Palace. Thus, the Linglong Palace would eventually fall into the hands of the various major powers of the Earth realm. During this period of time, if it wasn't for Dmo Xian's suppression, the Earth domain had probably already forgotten about the incident where they were nearly wiped out by the gloomy palace during the auction of the Earth domain. Now was he finally unable to restrain himself? The Overlord only asked me to invite Madame D over. As for the specific solution, I guess we'll have to wait for Madame D to arrive and discuss it with her. Patriarch Qiao said. Did he need to invite her to discuss it? Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly as her gaze was fixed on the door as she called out, "Then will family Patriarch Qiao please wait for me outside for a moment, I'll pack up and come out." Yes. Patriarch Qiao's expression didn't change much. Hearing this reply, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly darkened. His movement of getting up also gradually slowed down. She leaned against the soft pillow, her fingers subconsciously caressing the profound phoenix ring. However, now that he had lost his dark force, he couldn't activate the connection between the Netherworld Phoenix ring and the Netherworld Dragon ring. She pursed her lips and looked at the door again. "Old man Tsang." She concentrated and shouted in her heart. Old man Tsang's voice sounded in his mind. "What's wrong? Something has happened." Her expression was grave. "Have you sensed Beiyuan and Lang Lixian's auras?" Generally speaking, if Dmo Xian was not in the courtyard, he would definitely leave Tang Beiyuan and Lang Lixian in the courtyard. However, ever since Patriarch Qiao appeared, he had not heard of the two men. Old man Tsang's spiritual body immediately floated out and circled around the room. No. As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have sensed something, and his expression immediately changed. "Not good. I can sense two very weak auras outside the courtyard. They seem to be the auras of those two guards." Weak? Beiyuan and Lang Lixian had already been restrained? This was bad. "Girl outside the door." Old man Tsang sensed the person outside through the door. "Go and find Venerable Sovereign. Chi-Chi has already gone." Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. "We can only temporarily hold up the people outside the door. Wait for Xian to rush over first." He could only hope. When Chi-Chi rushed over to look for Xian, he was not busy. Otherwise, Chi-Chi would obediently wait for Dmo Xian to finish his work before passing on the message. "Madam, are you not ready yet?" Outside the door, Patriarch Qiao's voice suddenly sounded again. There was a different emotion in his tone. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly as she took a look at old man Tsang and whispered, "I'll have to trouble Patriarch Qiao to wait a little longer. I don't know where Xian has thrown my outer robe." Outside the door, there were several breaths of silence. Then, the door was pushed open. "Madame D, let me help you look for him. There's a difference between men and women. After all, Lord Qiao is my friend Qiao Yinyan's father. It's not right for him to enter my room alone." Yiqing Luo hurriedly stopped him. However, Patriarch Qiao's footsteps did not stop there. After pushing the door open, he directly walked in. At the same time, old man Tsang's figure speedily returned into the azure dew bracelet. Chapter 41-88. When he saw that there was no movement on the bed, that pair of dark eyes flashed with a complicated light. Is this what Di Furen meant by looking for the outer robe? The young girl curled up on the bed. Her slender and soft body leaned against the soft pillow. It accentuated the girl's soft and beautiful figure. Her hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The bedding covered the girl's waist. When the young girl raised her eyes to meet his gaze, that pair of eyes that were like the most flawless jade in the world crashed into his heart like colored glass. It didn't look like he was looking for a robe. It could almost be said that from the moment she said she wanted to pack up and follow him to see Dmo Xian, she just stayed on the bed, not moving at all. Obviously, right from the start, she had no intention of following him to meet Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo exchanged glances with the other party for several breaths and couldn't help but frown. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but when the other party's gaze landed on her, she felt as if she was dreaming. There was an obvious change in the expression in the other party's eyes. She hid the deep thoughts in her eyes and leaned lazily against the headboard. She deliberately relaxed her voice and said lazily, "I'm really sorry to have made Master Qiao come all the way here for nothing. I might have caught a cold when I was sleeping just now, and now I'm in a coma. I'm afraid I can't go with you to see Ah Xian." As she spoke, she raised her hand and rubbed her forehead. "Where are you feeling unwell?" the man blurted out almost instinctively. The urgency and concern in his tone made Yiqing Luo raise her brows. As if sensing that his emotions were not right, the man coughed softly and straightened his attitude. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm sure His Majesty will be very worried if he knows that Madame D isn't feeling well. So, may I trouble Patriarch Qiao to inform Ah Xian about this?" Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she put on an unwell and weak look. It made the other party's gaze fixated on her even more intensely. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to ask them to leave, that person suddenly walked over with large strides. With a few steps, he was already standing beside the bed. Yiqing Luo looked up. She looked into the pair of dark and repressed eyes. Patriarch Qiao would never look at her with such a gaze. "When did you find out?" He lowered his head and quietly looked at her. His eyes were dark and he had no intention of hiding it. Yiqing Luo played dumb. "What? When did you see that I'm not the Qiao family head?" The man didn't beat around the bush with her. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face slowly converged. It seemed that he did not intend to continue pretending. Yes, the person before him had the exact same face and voice as Qiao clan's patriarch. However, he was not the real Patriarch Qiao. How did he recognize me? It should be from the very beginning. Because Dmo Xian knew her current condition, so how could he possibly let family head Qiao invite her to the front hall for a discussion? Even if there was a need for discussion, even then, he would take the initiative to come to her room. Then, she purposely probed. She had to tidy herself up again before meeting Dmo Xian. If it was the real Qiao family head, he was naturally aware of her current situation. He knew that right now, she didn't even have the strength to tidy herself up. How could she possibly get off the bed alone and walk out of the room to meet Dmo Xian? So, from that moment onwards, she was certain. The person outside the door was not family head Qiao. She originally thought that she could drag on for a period of time until Dmo Xian rushed over. Chapter 4189. He directly admitted that he was impersonating Patriarch Qiao. This honesty made her not know how to drag the time. "From what I know, you don't know much about Patriarch Qiao. How did you tell?" He opened his mouth to ask again, his eyes burning as he stared at her face without blinking. This kind of gaze. Yiqing Luo vaguely felt that it looked familiar. It seemed as though she had seen this kind of gaze somewhere before. "Yiqing Luo, can I assume that, no matter what disguise I put on in front of you, you will still be able to recognize me?" He suddenly leaned downwards, getting closer to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as her slender brows creased. "You are Palace Lord of Secluded Palace." It's him. That person who impersonated Dmo Xian. The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace. It's actually him again. Running over to impersonate Patriarch Qiao again. Yi-Ching Luo raised her hand and directly pressed against his chest, which was getting nearer. You like to impersonate others so much? He. The person who was recognized didn't panic at all, instead he laughed lowly. His laughter carried a tinge of satisfaction. As expected, you recognized me. It really was him. Yi-Ching Luo's expression congealed, unable to understand what the palace lord of secluded palace's strange laughter represented. What do you want to do? Yi-Ching Luo raised her eyes to look at him. He was still smiling as he looked at Yi-Ching Luo's face. His gaze was deep and filled with possessiveness. Follow me. Yi-Ching Luo's body stiffened slightly as she was on high alert. The expression on her face maintained a languid elegance. To where? To where you should go. He replied in a deep voice. His voice was no longer that deep and dignified Patriarch Qiao's voice, but belonged to him, a slightly hoarse voice. Yi-Ching Luo's eyelashes twitched acutely. His words were no longer, I'll bring you away, but, to where you should go. This change made Yi-Ching Luo's expression change slightly. It's that person who asked you to come over? He gave a gentle smile as he slowly bent down, placing both hands on her shoulders. Yi-Ching Luo, I won't let you escape again, follow me. As he said that, his hand had already embraced her petite body. Originally it was just a light touch, but as soon as he touched it, he suddenly realized that the person in his arms had no intention of struggling at all. She was very obedient. He couldn't help but lower his head to take a few more glances. He tried to pick her up. Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace. Yi-Ching Luo suddenly cried out as she raised her hand and pressed against his arm. The force was very light. He paused and did not continue. The girl's eyes were calm. She looked up at him from such a close distance. Ah Xian is not far away. Are you sure you can take me away safely? He shook his head. His gaze was deep and gentle. You're willing to leave with me. The meaning is different. That gaze made Yi-Ching Luo extremely disgusted. To be honest, until now she couldn't believe it. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace said that he liked her. He leaned over slightly and leaned towards Yi-Ching Luo's ear. His voice was clear and soothing, very pleasant to listen to. But the words that came out of his mouth made Yi-Ching Luo's face turn pale bit by bit. He said, that bunch of brothers of yours who came all the way from Nirvana Realm, whether or not have the right to meet you again, will depend on your performance. Seeing Yi-Ching Luo's entire body stiffening, her face pale and her eyes looking at him in astonishment. Chapter 4190. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes sunk. What do you mean? The smile at the corner of the man's mouth gradually widened. It means exactly what it says. Yi-Ching Luo suddenly raised her hand and tugged the man's collar. What did you do to them? However, the hand that was about to reach out fell powerlessly to the ground. She was agitated and angry. Her body was getting weaker and weaker. The man's eyes drooped as he looked at the hand on the side of the bed, and the young lady's gloomy, pale and powerless face. What's the matter with you? He could tell that something was wrong with Yi-Ching Luo, wearing Patriarch Qiao's face, revealing that kind of worried and obviously adoring gaze towards her. This indeed made Yi-Ching Luo feel disgusted, adding on to the fact that she was worried about her own bunch of brothers. How could Yi-Ching Luo possibly answer the man's question? She pursed her lips tightly as she turned her head to avoid the man's outstretched hand, repeating word by word, What on earth did you do to them? What on earth do you want? The man's hand landed on empty air. He wasn't annoyed nor did he have the intention to force her. He slowly retracted his hand and gazed deeply at her face as his voice became gentle. I can guarantee that their choice is absolutely safe. But their life and death is in your hands. How can I believe you? Yi-Ching Luo suppressed the fear and uneasiness in her heart as she forced herself to calm down as she asked. There were still a few days before the 3-month appointment with her brothers. They shouldn't be able to reach the Earth Realm from Nirvana Realm so quickly. After all, it was a place that spanned across 2 realms. This must be. He intentionally lied to her, trying to lure her into his trap. I won't lie to you, the man replied softly as his thin lips pressed against her ear. Moreover, you don't have the right to doubt, isn't it? Yiqing Luo's slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly as the expression on her face turned gloomy. Yes. She had no doubts, no right to choose. Even if she told herself over and over again in her heart. Her brothers didn't come to the Earth realm. But what if? She couldn't afford to gamble on this. She couldn't admit the consequences of this what if. I don't have much time. You also know that I don't have any power in the Palace of Darkness. He was very frank. With the face of Qiao family's master, he smiled gently and affectionately. If you follow me obediently, I can guarantee the safety of your brothers. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she raised her head slightly, her cold eyes met with the man's without blinking. Then, he slowly said, word by word, I will go with you. The corners of the man's mouth raised into a big smile. He said in a tone as if he was teasing a pet, that's a good girl. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the girl's head. When his palm came into contact with Dao Qi's body, Dao Qi's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo only felt a chill down her spine. She held back and looked at him. Aren't we leaving? Why aren't you leaving? The man chuckled softly and slowly straightened his body. He let go of her touch. One day you will accept my touch. Yiqing Luo. She would never be able to accept it for the rest of her life. The man stood up straight and turned around. Let's go. Yiqing Luo gripped the bedding tightly. Her weak body made her unable to get down from the bed. But she didn't want the man to touch her. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she used her consciousness to summon Xian Gui. Chapter 4191. He sensed an unusual movement. The man who was walking in front turned his head back alertly. When he saw that jade-colored object, a huge tortoise, a sturdy and flickering tortoise shell, and its body was coiled with something that looked like a snake or dragon, sticking out its scarlet tongue. That pair of tiny eyes even exuded a cold and sinister aura. This Palace Lord immediately took a step back as he stared at Black Tortoise vigilantly. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and touched Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as her figure moved slightly and sat on top of the tortoise shell. After she sat properly, her face was even paler than before. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Her breathing was also slightly panting, as though she was out of stamina. Palace Lord walked towards her as his brows creased tightly as he asked in a probing manner, "Is your body unwell?" Yiqing Luo's performance made one suspect if something had happened to her. That look was totally different from the flamboyant one she had seen previously. Even when they used her brothers to threaten her, she didn't show much of a reaction. Thinking of this, Palace Lord's eyes were filled with concern as he half squatted down and was about to check Yiqing Luo's pulse. Yiqing Luo only patted Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as she expressionlessly avoided Palace Lord's hand. "Xian Gui, let's go." After that, she slowly raised her head as she shot a glance at Palace Lord indifferently. "What has it got to do with you if I'm not feeling well? Will you let me continue to rest in bed because of this?" Palace Lord's throat tightened as he met Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze, unable to say a single word of rebuttal. He indeed wouldn't let Yiqing Luo continue to rest. If Yiqing Luo replied in this way, that would be tacitly admitting the fact that she was really not feeling well. If Yiqing Luo in this state followed him back to Palace Lord's, would there really be no other effects? His mind was in a whirl. The young lady had already been carried out of the room by Black Tortoise. He quickly chased up and blocked in front of the young lady. The young lady raised her head as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord's emotions were fluctuating as he looked at the young lady's ridiculing gaze as his throat tightened. He was clearly worried that it would be unsafe and uncomfortable for the girl to sit on the Black Tortoise. But when his arm reached the girl's shoulder, the words that were on the tip of his tongue became, Black Tortoise is too big of a target, we'll be discovered. I'll carry you. Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm. She raised her hand and blocked his outstretched hand. Her emotions were very indifferent. Xian Gui can keep up with you. He had already lost count of how many times he had been rejected by the young lady. But every time, his heart would feel a sharp pain as if it was being torn apart. Something seemed to be hammering on his chest. Under the young girl's indifferent gaze, his stiff hand slowly retracted. He pursed his lips and did not speak again. He turned around and vanished into thin air. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her slender fingers tightened. Xiangui, keep up. No matter what, she had to make this trip. He summoned Xiangui first. If anything urgent happened, Xiangui's turtle shell would be able to handle it for some time. There was also Old Man Tsang. At the very least, he could buy some time. Even if Qi didn't manage to find Dmo Xian in time. Tang Beiyuan and Langley Xian hadn't appeared for a long time, which would attract Dmo Xian's attention. She only needed to wait for Dmo Xian to rush over, then there wouldn't be much of a problem. But, sometimes, no matter how perfect and precise her calculations were. But when things happened. Chapter 4192. The boundary between Earth Realm and Heaven Realm. A slender figure stood on the peak of the mountain, facing the wind. A black dress, under the strong wind, blew like a thick black fog, encircling that person's body. And behind that person, stood two respectful ladies dressed in lotus green attire. Miss Bai, do you think Yiqing Luo will really come? One of the ladies with a vicious expression carefully probed. This was obviously a trap. Yiqing Luo was such an intelligent person, would she really come? In front, the slender figure's red lips rose slightly, that young and beautiful, but extremely distorted face, surfaced a vicious expression. Yes, she will definitely come. The two ladies in lotus green attire exchanged glances. The other amiable-looking lady smiled. If Miss Bai says she will come, then Yiqing Luo will definitely come. Let's just wait patiently. That scoundrel has always been putting on airs in order to let others say that she values relationships and righteousness. How could she not come? The slender figure's voice was very pleasant, but the tone was so cold that it made one's scalp go numb. Isn't she relying on the Overlord? This time round, let's see how she is going to escape from Miss Bai's palm. The vicious-looking lady sneered. The slender figure who was addressed as Miss Bai's smile turned even colder, as her gaze slowly fell onto the 10 over people who were hung on the cliff, covered with injuries. Those people. Weren't they the World Mercenary Group's people? Sensing the slender figure's gaze, the young man who was hung upside down, his blue eyes were filled with an icy cold glint, shooting straight towards her. What are you staring at? The vicious-looking lady raised her profound energy, as she struck a palm strike towards that person. The young man's throat felt a fishy sweetness, as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The other amiable-looking lady stopped her. Don't kill them, these are all tools to restrain Yiqing Luo. Her words paused for a moment as she continued, letting them die now. How can it be as delightful as torturing them bit by bit in front of Yiqing Luo? Obviously, the lady was smiling, but the words that came out from her mouth made one tremble in fear. The three women looked at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. The laughter was sharp and piercing. The dozen or so people hanging at the edge of the cliff all looked angry, but they couldn't struggle at all. Captain, what should we do? The wounded youths whispered. Blue-eyed youngster Long Yunjan's expression was icy cold as his eyes were filled with flames. We must believe in Qing Luo. Yes, we must believe in Ah Luo. We will all be safe. The young girl beside him had a cold expression, but her words were filled with warmth and intimidating power. No matter how low their repeated voices were, they were still clearly heard by the slender figure at the edge of the mountain peak. The woman's eyes immediately became even more ruthless. He swung his arm. A long, soft whip appeared in her hand. She raised her whip and flung it towards the 10 over people hanging on the edge of the cliff. Yi Qing Luo? Yi Qing Luo? Yi Qing Luo? Did you treat Yi Qing Luo as a god? Heh, do you think she can save you just because she's here? Stop dreaming! The whip was raised, as it streaked across the air, giving out a swish-swish sound. A wisp of black profound energy encircled the whip. This whip landed. Chapter 4193. The 10 over people's faces instantly turned pale. When Long Yunzhan saw that soft whip descending, his body suddenly moved. Making use of the rope which was hanging him, he swung his body horizontally in front of those 10 over people. He attempted to use his own body to block the descending whip. His action made the young men and ladies' expressions changed as they cried out in shock, "Group leader!" Just as the soft whip was descending, suddenly a hurricane swept across. The air was filled with strong, profound energy. Following that, they saw that soft whip which was about to land on Long Yunzhan's body was flung away by the strong energy. Immediately following that, they heard a lady's shocked cry and miserable shriek. The 10 over people looked over in shock. They saw that black-robed slender lady who was standing at the side of the high peak was directly flung out, as she fell heavily onto the ground. There was no trace of the high and mighty look which she had earlier. The 10 over people's gazes suddenly lit up. Their gazes swiftly moved around the surroundings. Qing Luo was here? Qing Luo was here? The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. To them, the only person who would appear in time to save them was only Yi Qing Luo alone. Not only them were thinking this way. The lady who was flung out by the strong wind at the high peak also had the same thought. Under the support of 2 ladies dressed in lotus-green robes, the slender figure stood up from the ground in a disheveled state. Her gaze was like a torch as she stared at the direction where the energy had come from. But, a low and deep voice, extremely calm and dignified, "When did this palace lord allow you to take action against them?" The gloomy and cold, dignified voice instantly covered the entire air. Everything in the surroundings became cold and condensed. The slender figure suddenly froze as a glint of hatred flashed past her eyes. But very quickly, it was covered up by the charming expression on her face. The 2 ladies dressed in lotus-green robes who were supporting her, on seeing the person, became extremely respectful as they bowed in fear and trepidation. "Palace Lord." The profound waves rippled. A tall and slender figure slowly walked out. He was still wearing that face of Patriarch Qiao, but his entire temperament was emitting a sinister and powerful aura, totally different from Patriarch Qiao. "There's no need to get angry, Palace Master." The slender figure spoke in a coquettish voice. Her young and beautiful face was filled with a flattering smile. Her smile and frown were both charming and enchanting. If it was an ordinary person, this smile could really make people fall head over heels for him. However, when the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her, his gaze didn't change at all. The slender figure seemed to be used to this and continued to smile. "They are just a few insignificant tools. What's the harm in killing them?" The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace turned cold and his sleeves fluttered. The thick black Yin-Chi wrapped around the slender figure and threw her to the ground again. The slender figure was thrown into confusion. It was accompanied by a cold and dignified voice. "Bai Mei, are you questioning me?" The slender figure, which was Bai Mei, fell to the ground in a sorry state. She curled up and trembled slightly. After hearing the threatening words of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, he couldn't help but shrink back and soften his voice. "No, I don't dare, Palace Master." When the other 2 ladies saw this, they tacitly welcomed the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace while looking behind her. "Didn't Palace Master bring Yi Qing Luo here?" Chapter 4194. Could it be that? Did the Palace Master fail? He wasn't able to bring Yi Qing Luo over? Even if he captured Yi Qing Luo's former brother, to use him as a tool, he wasn't able to make Yi Qing Luo take the bait? Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder are looking for my mother? Suddenly, an extremely lazy voice sounded leisurely. Immediately following that, a blazing figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. The young lady was sitting on the back of a jade-green giant tortoise. Two snake-like and dragon-like things were resting on the young lady's legs. Just as the young lady opened her mouth, those two intertwined things suddenly raised their heads. Jade-green eyes, scarlet snake head, it made one shudder. The young lady was leaning lazily on the tortoise shell. Her jet-black hair was not tied up, looking slightly messy. However, this only served to further accentuate her pale face, which was devastatingly beautiful. Yi Qing Luo. Those two ladies dressed in lotus-green robes stared blankly at Yi Qing Luo, as they almost blurted out Yi Qing Luo's name. Their hearts were out of control as they started to jump nervously. This was fear emitted from their bones. Fear towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled slightly, her expression was lazy as her gaze swept past the both of them. She knew that Hall Head Wu Yen had joined the Nether Palace. But she had not expected that Third Elder had also joined the Nether Palace. All for the sake of fighting for the position of Linglong Palace Lord? If they knew the real use of the Linglong Palace Lord, would they put in so much effort just to become the Linglong Palace Lord? She scoffed lightly, with some ridicule. When the slender figure saw Yi Qing Luo, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Amidst the excitement, it was mixed with resentment and hatred. New hatred and old hatred made her completely forget about the existence of the Palace Lord of the Nether Palace. Yi Qing Luo, you're indeed here. Before she could say the word, here, what came towards her was a thick austere aura. A gust of cold wind brushed past her. The young lady who was sitting on Black Tortoise's back had already passed her, charging forward. Even her peripheral vision had not landed on her. Yi Qing Luo's expression was solemn, as Black Tortoise neared the edge of the peak. He saw a dozen people hanging at the edge of the cliff, their bodies riddled with scars. Her half-narrowed eyes were covered in a deep red flowing light, and she was like a bloodthirsty azura, cold and murderous. The young woman's aura suddenly burst forth. She got up and wanted to get off the Black Tortoise's back. Yi Qing Luo. The Palace Lord's figure flashed and, in a blink of an eye, he stood right in front of Yi Qing Luo. He stretched out his hand and stopped Yi Qing Luo's body. Let go. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were icy cold, the red light flashed and her murderous aura was extremely strong. I've said this before, if you listen to me obediently, nothing will happen to them. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace had not retracted his hand which was placed in front of Yi Qing Luo. He could tell that there was something wrong with Yi Qing Luo's current condition and body. Perhaps it was out of selfishness. He wanted to hide the fact that there was something wrong with the girl's body. So when he rushed over, he saw Bai Mei raising her whip, striking those companions whom Yi Qing Luo cared about. He snatched the chance to stop Yi Qing Luo. Because, he was very clear, if he didn't stop them, Yi Qing Luo would definitely strike. This strike, he didn't know if Yi Qing Luo's body could take it or not. Furthermore, Yi Qing Luo's unwell body would also be exposed. It was as if the gods were at work. So he struck out. Now, naturally he wouldn't let Yi Qing Luo forcefully support her body, to save those people who were unimportant to him. In his eyes. Chapter 4195. Yi Qing Luo's eyes drooped as she swept a glance at the hand in front of her. Her eyes were dull, as though there was no trace of emotion. Immediately after, her pink lips curled slightly as she looked at him coldly with a smile which didn't look like a smile, ridiculing. So, what do you want to do? Tell me your motive directly. The Palace Lord's lips pursed tightly into a straight line. He tightened his fingers as the expression on his face changed slightly. But the hand in front of Yi Qing Luo was not put down. Why? Didn't you want me to listen to you obediently? Then stop beating around the bush. Yi Qing Luo only gave a ridiculing smile as her eyes were cold. You can waste time, but my brothers can't. The palace lords still didn't move, I can assure you of their safety. Yi Qing Luo sneered, but I don't believe you. Yi Qing Luo. The palace lord's expression sunk, as though he was angered. Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged as her eyes turned chilly. The aura which exploded around her was filled with alienation which made one unable to get close to her. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace could see it. Yi Qing Luo was angry. Because the palace lord had kidnapped those brothers whom she cared about. So she was angry. And she was extremely angry. Looking at the young lady's anger and the ridicule on her lip, the palace master of the Netherworld Palace found it hard to breathe. Palace lord, why do you need to talk terms with her? Hall Master Wu Yen saw that the palace lord of Abyss Palace's attitude towards Yi Qing Luo was obviously not right as he immediately spoke out, half probing and half reminding, "She's alone now, so as long as these people are still in our hands, we can do whatever we want." Her words had just ended. Then, he felt an ice-cold chill coming from the front. Hall head Wu Yen trembled slightly as she met with the palace lord's icy cold eyes. Her heart skipped a beat. Why do you need to butt in on this palace lord's matters? The palace lord's dignified voice was filled with anger. The profound energy was majestic, like a sharp blade. Hall head Wu Yen gave a dull moan as his body flew out. His body fell to the ground and rolled in a circle. She propped herself up on the ground and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked at the palace master of secluded Darkness Palace in horror. No matter how stupid she was, it could also be seen. This palace lord of secluded Gloom Palace's intentions towards Yi Qing Luo. For Yi Qing Luo, he stopped Miss Bai from taking action against those 10 over people. He even hit young Miss Bai instead. Wasn't this obvious, taking revenge for Yi Qing Luo? Palace Lord, he actually liked Yi Qing Luo? Moreover, their relationship was obviously not shallow. Wasn't Yi Qing Luo the person whom secluded Darkness Palace wanted to deal with? The third elder was also stunned by the scene before him. She glanced at the palace master of the secluded palace, then at the hall master of the Wu Yen Hall. She immediately spoke to ease the atmosphere. She went to the hall master of the Wu Yen Hall and helped him up. She said, "The palace master has his own plans for what to do. We just need to follow his orders." Her words didn't get a look from the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. The third elder hurriedly supported the hall master of the Wu Yen Hall and retreated to one side. He tugged the hall master of the Wu Yen Hall, indicating for her not to open her mouth temporarily. His gaze seemed to be pointing at Bai Mei, who was standing by the side with her half-squinted eyes. Hall head Wu Yen understood his meaning as she fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Looking at that side, the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace was still talking to Yi Qing Luo. But after receiving Yi Qing Luo's expressionless reply, his expression turned extremely gloomy, but he was still suppressing his anger. Chapter 4196. Bai Mei sensed someone approaching and her eyes turned icy cold as she shot over. Hall Master Wu Yen clutched his chest in pain. His face was pale as he suppressed his voice. "Miss Bai, do you think? Palace Lord, he is he." Saying this, she pursed her lips intentionally as she hesitantly shut her mouth. Bai Mei's gaze turned even colder. Her vision looked towards the two entangled people as her red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful face was distorted to the extreme. Her black robe fluttered without any wind. A thick black fog rolled up. On the other side, no matter how Yi Qing Luo opened her mouth, the palace lord of Ethereal Palace had not moved from his spot, preventing Yi Qing Luo from saving the 10 over people by the edge of the cliff. Looking at the pale-faced youngsters hanging by the edge, Yi Qing Luo finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She suddenly took a step forward as her eyes were filled with an icy coldness. Her bare hands moved. Her fingertips covered the azure dew bracelet. Under the cover of her palms, she made use of Old Man Tsang's azure dew bracelet to release a burst of profound energy. Yi Qing Luo immediately used the Azure Dew bracelet to gather the profound energy and turned it into a sharp blade, heading towards the Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace. She had no intention to be lenient. Her expression was cold and icy cold. The Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace originally had no intention to dodge. But when he met with Yi Qing Luo's vibrant and captivating eyes, he understood, if he didn't dodge, this attack would definitely be aimed at his face, and it would come crashing down. There would be no hesitation at all. She had hardened her heart to kill him. His heart, at this moment, turned cold. The cold wind landed on his face. The Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace's figure swiftly turned as he avoided the sharp wind blade. Immediately following that, he retreated and blocked the path in front of Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's body rolled and her soft petite body slid down from Black Tortoise's back as she rolled onto the ground. The ground was filled with dead wood and grass. It was just a light stroke, but a few bright red wounds appeared on her fair and tender skin. She ignored it. She turned over and sat on the ground as she looked at Black Tortoise. "Xian Gui, bring him back?" Xian Gui shook his huge head. The snake dragon-like creature on her back stared at her with two pairs of scarlet eyes. Her eyes were filled with worry. Yi Qing Luo shook her head at it. "I'm fine, you go ahead." Xian Gui hesitated for a moment, but still obeyed Yi Qing Luo's command and rushed to the edge of the cliff. In the meantime, in the instant when the young girl shot out that profound energy, forcing the palace master of the Netherworld Palace to dodge to the side, his expression changed drastically. His eyes instantly congealed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. No, that's not right. This wasn't Yi Qing Luo's presence. The profound energy which attacked him was absolutely not the energy which Yi Qing Luo released. Could it be Venerable Sovereign? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he dispelled it. No, this was not the aura of a Venerable Sovereign. Instead, it was an extremely unfamiliar aura that he had never come into contact with before. Who could it be? In his heart, hundreds and thousands of thoughts were running through his head. His gaze suddenly narrowed. When he saw the girl rolling down from the Black Tortoise's back, he felt a chill run down his spine. He subconsciously rushed over and reached out his hand to help the girl up. But he only reached out halfway. He recalled that the young girl didn't like his touch. His hand froze in midair. What made him astonished was, Yi Qing Luo had no intention to avoid him. Or rather, Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked at him coldly, her eyes filled with rejection. Chapter 4197. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace suddenly seemed to have thought of something. His deep and cold pupils suddenly constricted. Perhaps it was to test if his thinking was right or not. He suddenly stretched out both hands and placed it on the young lady's shoulder. Under his palms, the young lady's soft body had obviously stiffened. Following that, her icy cold eyes stared at him emotionlessly. She didn't evade. She didn't evade. The Palace Lord's brows creased slightly as his palm slid down once again, directly pressing on the young lady's back. His other hand went around the young lady's waist, with a little force. Then he carried the young lady in his arms. It was effortless. The lady in his arms had no intention to evade. Instead, after she was brought into his arms, her body leaned against him softly. The Palace Lord's pupils contracted as his chest started to undulate due to nervousness. "Yi Qing Luo, have you?" He lowered his voice and said the remaining half of the sentence in a very low and deep voice. "I lost my profound energy." If it was Yi Qing Luo, when she saw those brothers hanging on the edge of the cliff, she would definitely fly over to save them. He didn't want his battle pets to go and bring his brothers up. Furthermore, if it was Yi Qing Luo, when he stopped her from saving those youngsters, she would directly make a move. When Yi Qing Luo made a move, that burst of energy was definitely not her presence. So, seeing Yi Qing Luo rolling down from Black Tortoise's back without any intention to stand up, he suddenly understood. What was the reason for Yi Qing Luo's series of actions, which was extremely strange? As expected, the young lady who was forcefully hugged by him turned stiff after she heard what he said. That pair of enchanting eyes that were originally covered with frost was now even more gloomy. Her face was covered with frost. Then, what does the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace want to do to me? Yi Qing Luo didn't deny it, as her indifferent tone seemed as though she wasn't talking about her own matters. The Palace Lord's arms suddenly tightened. What kind of person do you think I am? His tone was full of bitterness and some suppressed forbearance. Yi Qing Luo only curled her lips in disdain. Haven't the Palace of Darkness always wanted to kill me? No, to put it more accurately, the Palace of Darkness had always wanted to get me. This is a good opportunity. Are you an idiot? The man's suppressed tone revealed a hint of anger. He hung his head. Her overly long black hair spilled down a little and hung on Yi Qing Luo's face. He felt a little itchy. Warm air blew towards Yi Qing Luo's ears. It was different from Dmo Xian's weak and flushed face when they were in close proximity. Her body tensed up even more. It was as if all the hairs on his body were standing on end. Her entire body was filled with rejection of his approach. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace felt even more bitter in his heart as he hugged Yi Qing Luo's hands, almost wanting to rub her into his body. Knowing that you're in danger now, why did you still follow me? The suppressed anger reverberated in her ears. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out loud. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly as she looked at him with a ridiculing smile. You're concerned about me? She was obviously smiling. But the words that came out of her mouth were filled with ridicule. Palace Lord of Abyss Palace, do you know that when you ask this question, it's very sarcastic? She felt that this Palace Lord of Abyss Palace really had a problem with his brain. Chapter 4198. He made it sound as if he really loved her deeply. Becoming a whore and still wanting to erect a chastity memorial? She felt that this analogy was very suitable for the secluded palace. Right from the start. Using the World Group's brothers to threaten her. Now, he put on a concerned attitude, berating her angrily why she had to come. Wasn't it contradictory? Wasn't it ironic? Did he treat everyone as fools? Yi Qing Luo, must you misinterpret my meaning? The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace lowered his head as his extremely black eyes stared intently at Yi Qing Luo's face. This was the first time he used this angle to look at Yi Qing Luo. The petite body in his arms was very warm and soft. It was like soft cotton, with the fragrance of a young girl. He couldn't bear to let go of her. Even though the young lady's body was tensed up and her expression was icy cold. Every single time their eyes met, the young lady's icy cold gaze, as though it could shoot through a person. He totally couldn't feel any of the warmth and sweetness she had when she faced Dmo Xian. But even so, his heart was full of contentment. He had dreamt of this scene countless of times in the deep dark night. Today, his dream had finally come true. He couldn't bear to let go. Even if he incurred the young lady's disgust, he couldn't bear to let go. In his mind, he recalled what his master said to him. Master said, loving someone, isn't it to get her? If you can't get her, then what's the point of this love? Master said, so what if you can't get her heart? To be able to hold her in your arms, to let her accompany you, to let her belong to you alone, isn't that enough? Initially, he couldn't understand his master's words. Now, when he held her in his arms, that satisfied feeling in his heart. He finally understood the true meaning behind his master's words. The expression on his face changed slightly. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's gaze, it revealed some treacherous and chilly greed. This gaze and the sudden change in his aura made Yi Qing Luo's heart tighten. There seemed to be something. Unknowingly, there was a change. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suppressing each other's aura. All of a sudden, a panicked shout could be heard. Zi Qing! Goddess Tong! Hearing the overlapping calls, Yi Zichen frowned. Yiqing Luo used both hands to push away the palace lord's chest, as she stuck her head out to look at the edge of the cliff. They saw. Xian Gui quickly rushed to the edge of the cliff, and pulled them onto his back one by one. However, just as he pulled Long Yunzhan onto his back, an irresistible and chilling attack was directed at Long Yunzhan. Then, a black figure leaped into the air. His entire body was enveloped by the mysterious Yin Qi, and it was as if he was about to be devoured completely. The cold chill of the frost spread in the air. Long Yunzhan dodged. That power did not stop at all. There was a loud bang sound. The edge of the cliff exploded. The few people who were still hanging on the edge of the cliff quickly fell down. It was extremely fast. Those people were all tied up by rope. They were unable to concentrate and stabilize their falling bodies. The target of that attack had never been Long Yunzhan. Instead, destroy the cliff. Fortunately, Xian Gui reacted quickly. Just as those people were falling, he swiftly bent down and charged towards them. Xian Gui moved. The black figure also followed closely behind. The overbearing dark Yin Qi shot out. Chapter 4199. Group Leader. Seeing that figure falling down, the crowd immediately cried out in panic. It was Long Yunzhan. Just as that burst of overbearing profound Yin Qi landed. Using his last bit of energy, he knocked the few of them aside and was caught by Xian Gui in time. As for himself, he had forcefully endured all of the mysterious Yin Qi. Immediately following that, he lost all his energy and was unable to maintain his figure as he directly fell down. Just at this moment, a figure speedily dashed over. The lady's slender figure, but when she dashed towards Long Yunzhan, she hugged him tightly with both her hands. The lady's strength reduced Long Yunzhan's falling speed. The lady clenched her teeth as she held on to her last breath, hugging Long Yunzhan's totally exhausted body as she used all her strength to kick the cliff wall. Bam! Two entangled figures smashed heavily on the steep wall. The lady was below and the broken stones on the cliff wall had pierced deeply into her skin, causing numerous blood scars. The man's heavy strength was still pressing down on her body. This worsened the injury on the lady's back. This scene fell into the eyes of those the World Group mercenaries who were carried on Xian Gui's back as their hearts clenched tightly. A few cries of shock had already escaped from their mouths uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo turned her head around and looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the scene of Tong Ziqing's lower body, which was already filled with blood. By Mei. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she clenched her teeth and squeezed out these two words. Her gaze was like a sharp blade as it shot towards the black-robed lady who was standing on the other side of the cliff. Her eyes were filled with chilliness, as though it could freeze one into ice. By Mei. Previously because of a so-called young and beautiful face, she cooperated with the Palace of Darkness. In the end, she almost became the puppet of that human face of the Palace of Darkness. If it wasn't for Bai Su's appearance. At that time, she would have been long dead. Hadn't Bai Su sent her to the balance historian to be locked up? Now she actually ran out again and chose to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness once again? Changed to a young and beautiful face again? Was this what it meant to be able to sell anything just for a face? Indeed, she didn't change, even in death. Have you forgotten the lesson of the Dark Abyss Palace? Now, she was still causing trouble here and hurting her friend. The girl's eyes were as dark as a deep lake. Vaguely, a few streaks of red light could be seen moving about. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei giggled. Her young and beautiful face gave off an extremely twisted and awkward feeling when she laughed. His facial features seemed to be twisted together. However, Bai Mei was completely unaware of this. She lifted her hand and gently placed her slender fingers on her lower lip. She purposely curled her lips into a charming smile. His smile was filled with thick mockery. Yiqing Luo, do you know why I came back? Her voice was sharp and grating. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting into people's eardrums. Yiqing Luo's gaze was icy cold. Did you think that the promise that secluded Darkness Palace gave you would really be honored? You're just a tool the Dark Palace used to disgust me. So what? Bai Mei totally didn't care about Yi Qing Luo's words. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. As long as I can see you go to hell, even if I had to sell my soul, I'd be satisfied. Her smile became even crazier, as though she had experienced some huge stimulation. Chapter 4200. Bai Mei was still laughing. In order to save me, I didn't hesitate to hurt myself to save you. Ha ha ha, aren't you all silly? That sharp, piercing laughter kept reverberating in the air. Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She looked coldly at Bai Mei as her eyes were chilly. For someone like you who has no heart, how would you understand? I'm afraid you've never thought about your sister. Yi Qing Luo looked at her with ridicule. Your sister didn't hesitate to plead with Ah Xian to let you live. But you, time and time again, chose secluded palace to hurt your sister. My sister? Is she even fit to be my sister? Mentioning Bai Su, Bai Mei's anger seemed to have been ignited as her anger surged. That slanderer was merely to torture me. If it wasn't for her. Bai Mei was so angry that her entire body was trembling, intentionally putting on a look of deep sisterly love, just to maintain your own hypocrisy. After she finished howling this sentence, she seemed to have regained her senses. The smile on her face slowly turned chilly. I don't need to understand the so-called feelings you speak of, I only want your life. Her vision shot towards the side, towards the 10 over people on Xian Gui's back, who were in a sorry state. She wasn't flustered at all because Xian Gui had saved those people and lost the props to threaten Yi Qing Luo. Just like that, he stood there unhurriedly. When she raised her hand, her black robe fluttered in the wind. In her palm, a black flute had appeared unknowingly. The flute was entirely black without any other colors. When she saw that black flute, Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Surely not. As though to prove her thoughts, Bai Mei placed the flute by her lips. A sharp flute sound entered everyone's ears. The world group's young men and ladies suddenly turned pale as they laid on the ground, crying out in pain. As the flute's rhythm increased, they were in even more pain as their entire bodies started to tremble. Jin Zi, Xiao Yi, Ruo Pan, Xiao Yu. Yi Qing Luo's eyes turned red as she shouted out those people's names. But no one was able to give her any response. The sharp flute sound intertwined with her calls. Damn Abyss Palace! To actually use such a sinister move. Ha ha ha! Did you really think that I would let you rescue her so easily? Bai Mei looked at Yi Qing Luo's expression as she laughed contentedly. This was the first time she had seen such an interesting expression on Yi Qing Luo's face. What is this? The expression of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. She glared at Bai Mei fiercely. Bai Mei fiddled with the flute in her hand. The smile on her face was no longer as flattering as before. She glanced at the palace master of the Dark Palace playfully and said with a smile, "This is naturally the mission that the Venerable One secretly gave me." Hearing the word venerable, the gloomy face of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. He suppressed his anger. His eyelids drooped slightly as an apologetic expression appeared in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo, this matter. I didn't know about it, I'm sorry. Yi Qing Luo's scarlet eyes swept coldly towards him. His gaze was as cold as ice, without a trace of emotion. She gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Her brothers were groaning in pain beside her ears. She said word by word in an icy cold tone, "Is there any meaning if you knew about it or not?" Chapter 4201. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about how he was feeling. Her pair of icy cold eyes looked at him. "Let go of me." She didn't move. But the pressure in her words made the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace's hands on her loosen up. But he still hugged her as his tone lowered. "You can't help them. If I let go, the matter of you losing your powers will be discovered by Bai Mei." He pursed his lips tightly, and his eyes, which were as deep as a pond, were quiet and serene. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as her smile was cold. Their 4 eyes met. The young lady's emotionless voice rang coldly, "All these have nothing to do with you." His casual tone and his indifferent attitude, which was so alienated that it did not contain even the slightest bit of emotion. It had already pulled apart the distance between the two of them. The palace lord of Seclusion Palace could tell. The young lady no longer had any feelings towards him. Even those gratitude of him who had once saved her had also vanished into thin air. The current her. She hated him. Because he was from Seclusion Palace. Her brothers were also captured by him. Various thoughts were surging in his heart. The palace lord of Seclusion Palace knew that from now onwards, he had already been listed in Yiqing Luo's enemy list. This knowledge made the palace lord of Seclusion Palace's heart feel a dull, piercing pain. "I just don't want you to get hurt." His voice was hoarse and filled with extreme bitterness. As though he had used up all his energy, he used his throat to spit out a voice. "My master doesn't trust me anymore. My original intention was to make use of the world group to bring you to my side. I had never thought of to hurt them, hurt you." He totally didn't know that the world group's 10 over people had already been secretly tampered with. Bai Mei could use the flute to torture them. That flute's aura was sinister and cold, revealing an extremely familiar aura. He totally didn't need to think too much to tell. That was his master's flute. Master had passed the flute to Bai Mei, letting Bai Mei control the world group's members. Whereas he totally didn't know about it. This was already very obvious. His feelings towards Yiqing Luo had already made his master no longer trust him. But if he had to do it all over again, his choice would not change. However, he was a little confused. Like her master, a cold-blooded, heartless demon who killed without batting an eye. Why, after knowing that his heart had already been shaken, why would she do something like this? But he still spared his life? He didn't have time to think about this question. The person in his arms had already pressed her palm against his chest. It was so weak, but he could feel that she was pushing him. He could still hear the girl's bone-chilling voice. "It doesn't matter if you want to or not. What's done is done. There's nothing to explain." The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was startled. Regardless of whether he wanted to or not, he had already done it. That was right. He didn't want to hurt her. But right now, wasn't everything that he was doing hurting her? From the very beginning, the relationship between him and Yiqing Luo was the opposite. No matter how much he liked her, he would eventually hurt her. There was no place to hide from this. He suddenly broke into laughter. His laughter was filled with bitterness and relief. The hands that encircled her body slowly loosened. He laughed and staggered backward. The smile on his face was sometimes maniacal, sometimes it was light ridicule. His entire temperament had undergone a huge change. It was like he suddenly understood something. Chapter 4202. A gloomy and evil aura surrounded the palace master of Gloomy Palace. He laughed in a low voice. The expression on his face was already an unfathomable one. Looking at Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was no longer that kind of suppressed intense feelings. It was dark and gloomy, and at a glance, one would only feel incomparably gloomy. He shuddered. His robes fluttered in the wind. In the blink of an eye, he wore the face of Qiao family's patriarch and was shrouded in a black robe. He put on the black robe that belonged to him once again. He had completely blended into the darkness. The man slowly let go of the girl. His body fell to the ground as if he had no bones. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man in front of her, whose aura had surged but was clearly estranged from her. There wasn't much fluctuation in his eyes. It was just a glance before he quickly retracted his gaze. Then, he turned to look at his brothers, who were in agony because of Bai Mei's flute. Only when he looked at them Only when the young girl's eyes remained still did her emotions change. Her fingers stroked the azure dew bracelet, and she thought to herself, "Old man Tsang, can you save them?" She had lost her strength, and her body was still weak and powerless. It was impossible to save the World Group brothers. He could only rely on Old Man Tsang's secret help. "Girl Luo." Old Man Tsang's tone was a bit heavy. "I'm afraid this won't be easy." Yiqing Luo was stunned. "What's wrong?" "Old Man Tsang. If it was before, this old man could still help and use Xian Gui as a smokescreen to save the children of the World Group, but—" He paused for a moment and asked, "Do you know what the flute in Bai Mei's hand is?" Yiqing Luo shook her head. Old Man Tsang sighed. "That's the flute of Dark Een." "Flute of Dark Een?" Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. She could tell. The long flute in Bai Mei's hand was filled with an extremely dense, evil aura. When Bai Mei played the flute, the sinister aura became denser and denser. She roughly knew that this flute was given to Bai Mei by the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows as the last bargaining chip. But, from Old Man Tsang's mouth, he could roughly hear it. This flute was more troublesome than he had imagined. As you can imagine, the Dark Een flute is filled with dense Een Qi. Once it is blown, the Een Qi can completely bewitch a person's heart. Right now, Bai Mei's heart has been completely blinded by the evil energy. When she uses the Dark Een flute, she can only make those children who have already been implanted with the Dark Een flute feel the agony of the evil energy. Old Man Tsang explained with a serious tone, "If the Dark Flute of Shadows was used by someone else, the effects would definitely not be limited to this." In other words, the mastermind of the Tenyu Palace gave the Dark Een flute to Bai Mei, but did not teach her how to use it. It was just that by using the profound Een Qi of the Dark Een flute as a medium, it allowed the profound Een Qi to go berserk in the World Group's brothers' bodies, causing their bodies to be unable to withstand such a burden, causing them to be in excruciating pain. If it was someone else, it was very likely that the palace master of the Netherworld Palace had used the mystical Een Qi to control the female disciples of the Linglong Palace to kill each other. This was indeed very troublesome. He had to think of a way to purge the profound Een Qi from his brothers' bodies. If the mystical Een Qi stayed in the body for too long, it would be extremely painful. The damage to the human body was extremely serious. She still had to think of a way to snatch the Dark Een flute away, in case Bai Mei blew the Dark Een flute again, tormenting the World Group's brothers. Chapter 4203. Old Man Tsang said, "If I show myself, I'm afraid I'll attract the attention of the people behind Dark Palace." In other words, there was no other way. At the very most, he could only secretly help Yiqing Luo to cast a smokescreen, to cover up the fact that Yiqing Luo had lost her profound energy. "Yiqing Luo, what's wrong? Aren't you always arrogant and haughty? Now that you see the brothers you care about lying on the ground in pain, aren't you going to save them?" Bai Mei saw Yiqing Luo sitting on the ground with a gloomy expression, and the cold glint that flashed past the corner of her eyes made her shudder. In order to conceal the rising fear in the bottom of his heart, she suppressed the discomfort in her heart and continued, "Look at yourself now. Do you really deserve the title of Mistress of the Emperor Palace?" The girl sat motionlessly on the ground. This caused Bai Mei to feel a little suspicious, and a little fearful in her heart. Yiqing Luo was such a cunning and sinister person. Perhaps this was a deliberate plan of hers. She had crossed hands with Yiqing Luo so many times. Towards Yiqing Luo's habits, he more or less had some understanding. She didn't dare to easily probe what tricks Yiqing Luo was up to. "Bai Mei." Yiqing Luo slowly opened her mouth as her voice sounded inexplicably hoarse. She raised her eyes, and a faint red light flashed through them. This trace of red light caused Bai Mei's heart to tremble. She subconsciously stuttered, what? Yiqing Luo's pink lips twitched slightly as her smile was a little chilly. "In order to send me to hell, you didn't hesitate to sell your own soul." If Ah Xian were to find out that you've escaped from the balance historian's side and joined the secluded palace once again, what do you think he would think of you? Yi Qing Luo's expression was extremely calm. The corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking smile, but at the same time, it was just the right amount of light. Bai Mei's pupils constricted. The young and beautiful face was slightly twisted. How dare you mention His Majesty? Do you really think I'm afraid of you? This scoundrel! If not for her appearance, how could Di Zun leave the two of them? She could still stand by Di Zun's side, silently holding his heart and secretly loving him. But Yi Qing Luo's appearance had disrupted all the rhythm. She had taken the venerable sovereign away. As a result, even Baisu, her sister, could hardly see Di Zun. She was indeed much older than Dmo Xian. But, so what? She adored Dmo Xian. For Dmo Xian, she did not hesitate to change her face. How much effort had she expended to find a suitable, young and beautiful face? Yi Qing Luo, that slut, didn't put in any effort. What right did she have to become the Overlord? He still had the cheek to strut around in front of her? What Yi Qing Luo relied on was merely the Overlord's favor. Right now, Di Zun was not by his side. In her hands, she had enough tools to threaten Yi Qing Luo. She wanted to see how Yi Qing Luo could still be so unyielding. Thinking of this, Bai Mei gradually suppressed the fear in her heart. The fingers that were gripping tightly onto the dark Yin flute slowly lifted up and shook it slightly in front of Yi Qing Luo. After seeing the young girl's slightly sunken expression, Roland's eyes widened. Bai Mei's heart was satisfied and her face was filled with complacency. Yi Qing Luo, don't forget, your brother is still in my hands. Her eyes suddenly flashed past a sharp and thick black. Her figure suddenly pressed down towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Accompanied by the strong wind whistling and vibrating sound, Bai Mei's complacent voice was also heard. Chapter 4204. Yi Qing Luo's body instantly froze on the spot. Even if she lost her profound energy. With old man Tsang's help, she could avoid Bai Mei's attack. But Bai Mei's words made her feel as though her entire body was frozen into ice, unable to move. Her eyes were filled with an icy cold intent. Bai Mei sneered as she looked at the motionless Yi Qing Luo, her gaze turned sinister. An irresistible attack. Surging in the strong wind. The strong profound wave shook everything around Yi Qing Luo. As though in the next moment Yi Qing Luo was swallowed up. She was dead meat. The smile on Bai Mei's face gradually widened. Suddenly, the surging profound wave shook in the air. Just as it got close to Yi Qing Luo. As though it was scattered by something. In a split second it dispersed in midair. Bai Mei's smile froze on her face. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she stared venomously at the fellow who spoiled her plans. She raised her eyes. Bai Mei saw a black-robed figure standing in front of Yi Qing Luo at a moderate pace. The wide sleeves of his robe fluttered in the wind along with the aftershock. Under the strong wind, his tall and slender figure was extremely majestic and domineering. Bai Mei's face trembled as she bit her red lips and spoke unwillingly. Palace Lord, what do you mean by this? Right from the start. This Palace Lord of the secluded palace kept on spoiling their plans. She was willing to lower her stance and talk to him. But it didn't mean that she respected him. After all, he was a palace master in the Palace of Darkness on the surface. She had to give the revered some face. But in her heart, Bai Mei looked down on the Palace Lord of the secluded palace. If he was really doted on by the revered and was the next successor, how could the revered possibly pass the dark Yin flute to her behind his back? Because of this, after Bai Mei's plans were spoiled numerous times, her questioning tone wasn't as good as before. The man stood in front of the young lady. His expression was cold as that pair of dark eyes under the black robe locked onto Bai Mei. My man, don't move. His voice was icy cold. Bai Mei's expression congealed. This is the revered's intention. Palace Master, are you going to disobey the High Lord's orders? Master only wants me to bring her back to the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. The Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows answered calmly. Everything I did was to bring her to the Palace of Darkness. Bai Mei growled unwillingly. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her. I'm here. You're not needed. You like her? Bai Mei pursed her red lips, and a trace of anger appeared on her face. The Venerable One doesn't believe you, and we can't believe you either. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace laughed mockingly. I don't care whether you believe me or not. This person belongs to this Palace Master. If you interfere, this Palace Master will kill you and then apologize to Master. His words were enunciated clearly and enunciated word by word. But his tone was icy cold. Yiqing Luo totally couldn't tell if he was worried or concerned about her. The man standing in front of her. The change in his aura had already made her feel extremely unfamiliar. It was as if the person in front of him was still the same person, but his heart was different. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Finally, she retracted her gaze and placed it on Bai Mei. Her gaze clashed with Bai Mei. It fell into Bai Mei's eyes. This was Yiqing Luo using the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace's backing to provoke her. Chapter 4205. The Palace Master of Gloomy Palace smiled faintly and said, You can try and see if I'm more important in Master's heart or if you are more important. Bai Mei was both angry and embarrassed. Her face turned red. Of course, she didn't dare to compete with the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. She was very clear about her position. She was merely a tool used by the people behind the scenes in secluded Darkness Palace because of the grudge between her and Yiqing Luo. She knew very well how cruel the Venerable One could be. She suppressed her anger, clenched her fists, and spat out each word through gritted teeth. I hope the Palace Master will live up to the Venerable One's expectations. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness sneered. You don't have to worry about that. Bai Mei gritted her teeth and moved away. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes slightly and looked at the slender straight figure in front of her. The expression on his face did not change much. His eyes were calm and emotionless, until the person in front of him turned around. The eyes under the black robe met hers. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly. Let him go and I will leave with you. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace didn't say anything. He just stared at her face with his dark eyes. He let out a low chuckle. He smiled. His voice was low and hoarse. Vaguely, it felt somewhat familiar. She furrowed her brows tightly, and there was some kind of emotion in her heart. By the side of her ear, his smiling voice was heard, interrupting her thoughts. Yiqing Luo, for your gang of brothers you really can sacrifice anything. His smile seemed to contain some unfathomable meaning. It was like that in the past, and it's still like that now. With so many weaknesses, it'll be very difficult for you to succeed. He slowly squatted down, facing Yiqing Luo. When he leaned in close to her, using a voice that only the two of them could hear, he said, You know very well how I feel about you. You also know the other meaning of leaving with me. The current you, the you who has lost your profound strength, no matter what I want to do, you won't be able to resist. For those people, do you really want to go with me? Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled. It had another meaning between men and women. Naturally, she understood. But you won't. Her tone was very calm, and she did not panic because of the man's words. You trust me that much? The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace seemed happy and smiled. Yiqing Luo looked at him calmly as she slowly shook her head. The people behind the secluded palace will not allow you to do this. Two people on opposing side. There was no such thing as a credible topic. However, she knew that the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows were desperate to get their hands on her. And she had always been together with Dmo Xian. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had no chance at all. Therefore, that was why the Linglong Palace Hall was acting this way. Unexpectedly, during the time she was in the Linglong Palace. Coincidentally, she caught the eye of the blood-bone barbarian king, which led to the death of the Ling Long palace master. Not only did it implicate Dmo Xian, almost the entire land domain was stirred up because of this. The palace of gloomy darkness had lost another chance. Just in time. It was also because of the matter between her and the barbaric blood-bone king. Even though he had sent Wu Fu to test the waters, the palace of gloomy shadows probably still had some doubts about her. In the end, they might as well make use of the brothers in the world group whom she cared about, to threaten her. How would the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness possibly give the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness the chance and time to take liberties with her? When the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness heard her reply, his laughter grew louder. Chapter 4206. Want to know? Why did they become my prisoners? The Palace Lord pointed at the world group's youngsters and young ladies, who were lying on the ground panting heavily. Yiqing Luo stared at his face, which was covered by the black robe. Are you trying to tell me your real identity? The Palace Lord laughed so hard that his chest was heaving up and down. Do you want to know? Yiqing Luo replied without hesitation, yes. The man's laughter stopped abruptly. That pair of serene and dark pupils were like a bottomless whirlpool. After a moment of silence, his body leaned forward slightly. The face covered by the black robe was right in front of her eyes. He laughed softly. This mask will be taken off by you personally. Yiqing Luo's eyes reflected the man's black robe. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't move. Like this, the two of them maintained this posture for several breaths of time. She opened her mouth and her voice was calm. I don't have the energy to lift my hand, take it off yourself. His indifferent tone did not reveal much of his emotions. Such a rejection made the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace laugh uncontrollably. He retracted his figure and slowly stood up. What a heartless woman, not even willing to give me a little bit of hope. He raised his hand. His slender long hand slowly landed on the black robe. Bit by bit, he pulled the black robe away. The black robe fluttered as it landed on the ground, slowly revealing the man's face. Yiqing Luo's first glance was met with a pair of glazed black eyes. His gentle temperament wasn't unfamiliar to her. His handsome, picturesque face was filled with gentleness and elegance, totally unable to tell that he belonged to the dark side. His gentleness, like a noble prince, was emitted from his bones. Staring at the man in front of her, Yiqing Luo laughed. It's indeed you. Gu Jingyu. Yes, Gu Jingyu. The man in front of her, wasn't he Nirvana Realm, Wind Valley Sect's young matriarch? Gu Jingyu? Previously, because he was in the Imperial Palace, he had overstepped his boundaries. After that, he was imprisoned in the Wind Valley Sect's underground prison. But later on, because of the secluded Darkness Palace, there was a huge battle. Gu Jingyu had disappeared during the Great Battle. At that time, he probably went to the Palace of Darkness as the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace raised her eyebrows and smiled gently. So, you already guessed it was me? As he spoke, he raised his hand and touched his face. Aren't you afraid that this face is another one of my disguises? Previously I had my suspicions, but I didn't have any evidence. Yiqing Luo looked at the man in front of her. As compared to the first time they met, he looked totally different. Your characteristics are ingrained in your bones. This cannot be imitated. From the moment he first saw the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness, his gaze and the look in his eyes gave her a familiar feeling. However, he had never thought that he was someone from the Nirvana realm. Later on, he impersonated Dmo Xian, impersonated Patriarch Qiao. That pair of naked eyes. No matter how similar the imitation was, what was in his bones could not be faked. His gentle aura. No one could imitate it. Ha ha ha. Can I take it that you're praising me? Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. No, he should be called Gu Jingyu now. His dark red lips curled up slightly. Yi Qing Luo sneered, "You've really concealed yourself very deeply." Chapter 4207. The brothers of the World Group laid on the ground, totally unable to move. They could only use a vicious gaze as they stared fiercely at Gu Jingyu. "It's you. It's you." Yan Xiao Yi was so infuriated that her eyes turned red. "You're actually the palace mistress of Secluded Palace. Gu Jingyu, you lied to us." The group of them, in order to reunite with Yi Qing Luo in the Earth Realm. Every day, other than eating and sleeping time, they would be cultivating with all their might. Gui Yu and Ghost Robber would change their methods to train them daily. Gui Wu would occasionally give them pointers. Later on, they received news that Yi Qing Luo had met with an accident in the Earth Realm. Everyone became even more anxious. They had finally raised their abilities to the Earth Realm, and Ghost Robber were willing to send them to the Earth Realm to reunite with Yi Qing Luo. But unexpectedly, they had just reached the Earth Realm and met Gu Jingyu. That time in Nirvana Realm. Gu Jingyu and the World Group had met several times. They all understood Gu Jingyu's feelings towards Yi Qing Luo. After all, he was someone who had saved Yi Qing Luo and helped her before. They totally didn't have much vigilance in their hearts. When they heard Gu Jingyu say that he had always been with Yi Qing Luo, he then told them some interesting things that Yi Qing Luo had experienced in the Earth Realm. They instantly believed in Gu Jingyu. Following that, they followed Gu Jingyu to look for Yi Qing Luo. After this search, when they opened their eyes again, they were already tied up and hung on the side of the cliff. By the side were those three ladies. They totally didn't suspect Gu Jingyu at all. The first thing they did was to worry about Gu Jingyu's safety. But no matter how they asked where Gu Jingyu was, while the three ladies were cursing and scolding or torturing them sinisterly, their tones seemed as though they didn't know Gu Jingyu. They had not expected. All of these were Gu Jingyu's scheme. It wasn't that Bai Mei and the others didn't know Gu Jingyu, but Gu Jingyu's identity was the palace mistress of Secluded Palace, the disciple of that revered of Secluded Palace. Facing the World Group's gazes, Gu Jingyu's smile didn't diminish as he was still as gentle as before. "This palace lord isn't considered to be lying to you. After all, you have indeed seen Yi Qing Luo, isn't it?" "Pui." Yan Xiao Yi gritted her teeth and forced herself to get up from the ground. "If you have the ability, fight with my Ajin one-on-one. What kind of man are you to play tricks behind my back?" Xiao Jin, who was holding her hand tightly. "One-on-one? Are you sure it wasn't a one-sided beating by Gu Jingyu?" Yan Xiao Yi looked at Xiao Jin's expression and knew what he was thinking. She angrily flung his hand away. "Look at how useless you are, Xiao Jin." Yan Xiao Yi pursed her lips tightly as her gaze swiftly shot towards Yi Qing Luo and stared at her own man resentfully for failing to meet her expectations, using a voice that could only be heard by the two of them. "Huang Fu family's successor can't even defeat a Gu Jingyu? Now isn't the time for you to conceal your ability. Haven't you noticed that Qing Luo's expression isn't right?" Xiao Jin's expression froze. "Ha ha ha. Such a pity now. Do you have the ability to stand up for Yi Qing Luo?" Gu Jingyu looked towards Bai Mei's direction. Bai Mei moved her fingers and the flute of dark Yin was placed by her lips. Several sharp flute sounds rang out. The brothers of the World Group instantly groaned in pain. Yan Xiao Yi's expression instantly turned pale. Cold sweat kept seeping out from her forehead. Xiao Jin suppressed his pain as he carried the young lady into his arms. Looking at the 10 over people who were groaning in pain on the ground, Yi Qing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand as she tugged onto Gu Jingyu's robe. Chapter 4208. His ice-sealed eyes met Gu Jingyu's eyes without blinking. "Gu Jingyu." Gu Jingyu's eyes drooped as he looked at that fair slender hand on his arm as his lips curled into an unfathomable smile. He raised his other hand and stopped Bai Mei from blowing the flute. Yi Qing Luo's breathing was slightly hurried. Her entire body seemed to be burning with a scorching fire, burning her. Her legs were trembling slightly. She couldn't muster up any energy at all. But the anger surging in her chest supported her will as the hand which was locked on Gu Jingyu's arm kept on tightening. Yi Qing Luo, you! Bai Mei's sharp gaze shot over as she sized up Yi Qing Luo suspiciously. When his line of sight fell on her legs, he felt a chill down his spine. Bai Mei's eyes lit up. Ha ha ha. I was wondering why you were so strange today. From the looks of it, you've suffered quite a serious injury. She was just saying, why was Yi Qing Luo so low profile today? Initially, she thought it was because those people in the world group were controlled by her, so Yi Qing Luo had some misgivings. But from the looks of it now, Yi Qing Luo apparently couldn't even take care of herself. If one took a closer look, she could totally tell Yi Qing Luo's slightly trembling legs, and that extremely abnormally pale face. Bai Mei took a look at Gu Jingyu as a vicious glint flashed past her eyes. Palace Lord, since Yi Qing Luo is seriously injured, we don't need to discuss any terms with her. Just kill all of them and we'll bring her back. Someone who couldn't even stand properly. Did she still need these threatening tools? With the Palace Lord of secluded darkness around, she probably wouldn't have the chance to make a move on Yi Qing Luo. But she could also use another method to torture Yi Qing Luo. She could tell that Yi Qing Luo cared about her bunch of brothers extremely. Deep feelings and loyalty. Then, in front of Yi Qing Luo, she could slowly torture these people to death. Whereas Yi Qing Luo didn't even have the ability to save them. To Yi Qing Luo, this was the real torture and agony. Why do I need you to tell me what to do? Gu Jingyu frowned and looked at Bai Mei with a cold look. Bai Mei gave a flirtatious smile. I'm only raising a suggestion, don't tell me. Palace Lord doesn't wish to break all of Yi Qing Luo's wings, so that she can only choose to rely on you alone? He had to admit it. It was difficult for Bai Mei to capture the desire in a man's heart. As soon as he said this, Gu Jingyu's heart suddenly moved. Bai Mei covered her mouth and chuckled. Isn't this the best opportunity? When a woman has nothing left, she can only rely on you to live. There was something surging in Gu Jingyu's eyes. The pitch-black vortex expanded bit by bit. Seeing this, Bai Mei's gaze immediately swept towards the two people beside her. She lowered her voice and instructed, "Do it now, you must use the cruelest method to kill those people." Hall Chief Wu Yan and Third Elder looked at each other before looking at Gu Jingyu with some fear. However, Gu Jingyu did not seem to object to Bai Mei's instructions. The two of them tried to test the waters as they walked towards the world group. Yi Qing Luo's body moved as she lifted her feet and walked towards that direction. But her arm was held by Gu Jingyu. He used a little strength and pressed Yi Qing Luo into his arms. "Let go!" Yi Qing Luo clenched her teeth as she cried out sharply. Chapter 4209. Yes. Belong to him. Belong to him alone. This thought kept on enlarging in Gu Jingyu's mind. It almost drove him crazy. His heart was beating uncontrollably for it. He wanted Yi Qing Luo. He wanted Yi Qing Luo. No matter what methods he used. As long as he could keep Yi Qing Luo by his side, anything was possible. Gu Jingyu, have you gone mad? Yi Qing Luo sensed that the man who was hugging her tightly had an abnormal change in his emotions. That pair of arms which were clasped on her seemed as though he wanted to knead her into his bones and blood. His entire body was emitting a sinister and terrifying vicious qi. As though he wanted to destroy something. As though he was about to step into hell. His aura spread wildly in all directions. Yi Qing Luo struggled, trying to break free from the man's restraint. But Gu Jingyu seemed to have sunk into some kind of crazy self-consciousness. He couldn't hear her voice at all. He only kept on tightening his arms. Yi Qing Luo was in pain again, and she couldn't muster up any energy. Being pressed into his embrace, she was strangled till she couldn't breathe. Bai Mei saw Yi Qing Luo's situation, and her red lips curled into a complacent maniacal sneer. Ha ha. Yiqing Luo, don't worry, you'll be in even more pain soon. Stop struggling, save some energy and scream later. Her smile was malevolent, maniacal. He vented the jealousy and resentment that had accumulated in his chest for a long time. On the other side, Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder had already walked in front of the world group. Xian Gui was like a huge mountain, blocking in front of those young men and young ladies. Jade eyes stared vigilantly at the surroundings. On the complicated patterns on the tortoise shell, that two intertwining things which looked like a snake or a dragon kept on intertwining as it stuck out its scarlet tongue. Both pairs of eyes were emitting a penetrating cold glint. Its huge body blocked Hall Master Wu Yen and the Third Elder. On the flat ground, the young men and women were panting heavily, trying to relieve the pain in their bodies from the twisting and twisting of their bodies. They could clearly hear the conversation between Bai Mei and Qing Luo. They wanted to resist, wanted to rebuke. But they didn't even have the energy to move. The minute Bai Mei blew that black flute, inside their bodies, it was like a surging ocean, shaking and surging with turbulent waves. At first, they felt as if there were thousands of thin needles poking into their bodies. It was as if thousands of worms were gnawing away at their bodies. It stung and itched. Then, he felt as if he was on fire and as if he was in an icehouse. Most painful and unbearable. It was in this asterisk. Their internal organs and bones all seemed to be broken, breaking one by one and then reforming one by one. It was accompanied by a kind of tearing pain. This made them unable to resist at all. Even now, Bai Mei had put down her flute. The pain in his body had yet to subside. Yen Xiao-yi panted heavily as her fingers clenched tightly into the flesh of her palm, gritting her teeth as she spoke out sharply, "Qing Luo, we're all right. They can't hurt us." Yiqing Luo's situation was obviously not right. They absolutely could not become Yiqing Luo's burden. They could not let Yiqing Luo sacrifice herself for them again. Xiao Jin looked at the woman's trembling body, her pale lips, and the sweat on her forehead due to the pain and exertion. He reached out and pulled her into his arms.